We are starting section 3 of chapter 7, which is the Pythagorean Theorem. So please write this down in your notes. Also copy down the picture and copy down the formula. So as we're going along, you're going to be writing down your notes. If you have questions, you're going to write them down on the side, and you can ask those later. If you don't understand something, first try rewinding the video and listening and watching again. You can also use your textbook as a reference. So on page 302 in your textbook, this is where the information begins. Okay, so we're looking at the Pythagorean Theorem. The Pythagorean Theorem is only for right triangles. So how do I know if it's a right triangle? I can make a 90-degree corner in one of the corners. So with those right triangles, if you look at the lengths next to those right triangles, we're going to call those the legs. So that's A and B. If you go straight across from that, 90 degree, you're going to get the hypotenuse, which is C. So our formula is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we can find any one of these lengths if we know the other two. So we're going to first start practicing by trying to find C. So once you're ready, you can move on. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause it while you write down all of your notes. Alright, so here's our first example. So copy this down into your notebook. Example 1A. We want to find the length of the hypotenuse. And remember, the hypotenuse is C. So the first thing I'm going to do is write down my formula, which is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And if you look at the triangle, you can see I have A, B, and C. So I wrote that down. I'm going to find which number corresponds to A, which one corresponds to B, and I'm trying to solve for C. So I know A was 5, so it's 5 squared. I know B is 12, so that's 12 squared, equals C squared. So 5 squared is 25. 12 squared is 144. That equals C squared. I'm going to add my two numbers. So I get 169 equals C squared. And if I take the square root of each side, so hopefully you've memorized some of these, what is the square root of 169? So that would be C. So remember here, I want to take the square root of both sides because the square root of C squared is C, and the square root of 169 is 13. So copy that down, pause if you need to. We're going to do another example. So now you're going to try one on your own. So on your own, find the hypotenuse. So please copy down the picture, copy down the numbers. So remember, the first thing I want you to do is write down the formula. Okay, then you're going to plug in your A and your B. So you're going to plug in your numbers. And then you're going to solve for C. When you're ready, please see the text box on your right. You're going to enter in what number you think C should be, and then you can move on. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause. If you need to rewind it, you can rewind it. And like I said, there's also examples in your textbook. So if you go to page 302 in your textbook, you should see some examples. Here's one more example for you to try. So we're going to copy this down. Sorry, you're not going to try this. We're going to do this together. So I now have my triangle, but as you notice, I have the two legs. So here's a leg, and I actually have C given. So I'm going to do the same thing that I've been doing. We write down my formula, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Now I'm going to plug in what numbers I have, and if I forget, I'm just going to write down this is A, this is B, and this is C, so that I don't have to remember that. So now I know I don't know what A is, so A squared. I know B is 6 squared. And then C is 10 squared. So I still have A squared. 6 squared is 36. 10 squared is 100. Now I need to combine like terms. I want to get the A by itself, so I need to get rid of my 36, so always show what you're doing. So if I subtract 36 from each side, I get A equals, we see 100, that minus that, so we must get 64. That's A squared. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So A equals 8. Okay, so A equals 8. Okay, so now you're going to try one on your own. So if it helps, label. So they've already labeled this one B. So you could call this one A, and you can call this one C. So first write down your formula, plug in what numbers you have, and solve for your unknown, just like I did. Again, if you need some extra help, you can look in your textbook. So now look at page 303 in your textbook. Please enter your answer into the text box on the right. When you're ready to move on, go ahead and move on. I want you to try one more, similar to what you just did. Notice this is your right angle, so think about what's directly across from that and what would be adjacent to that. So write down your formula and find the unknown. Please enter your answer into the text box on the right. Okay, and of course we need to do a word problem. So you're playing capture the flag. You are 50 yards north. So here, down here in the picture, you can see here's your base down here in the bottom. So you are 50 yards north. So here's 50 yards north right there. And 20 yards east. 20 yards east. So here's 20 and 50 of your team's base. The other team's base is 80 yards north. 80 yards north. So here's 80. And 60 yards east, and 60. So here's the 60, so here's where they are. How far are you from the other team's base? So you want to find this distance here. So this is a right triangle. Here's your right triangle. So you have A, B, and you're trying to find C. So I've written that over here. You have 30 squared plus 40 squared equals C squared. And on these, it's okay to use your calculator. So if I take 30 squared plus 40 squared, I get 900 plus 1600 equals C squared. And then what is the square root of both of those? And you don't really need your calculator, right? Because that was 3, that is 4. So what is the square root of 25? Well, it's 5, but I need 2,500, so it's 50, which generally makes sense. If the A is 30, B is 40, C should be 50. Okay. Okay, so now you are going to try one on your own, and this says, what is the distance from your base to the other base? So here's your base, and here's the other base. So I've made my purple triangle, so we're not going to use those numbers that they had before. So you need to figure out what this distance is, and then you're going to calculate C. So you can look at this point, you know it is 1680, and you know you're at 0, 0. So that should help you figure out what A and B are to calculate your C. When you're ready to move on, go ahead and move on, but enter your answer into the text box on the right. Okay, so we are looking, here's our summary of what we just did. So we are looking at the Pythagorean Theorem. Which is only for right triangles. Okay, so here's my right triangle. I can show that by putting my little square in the corner. And I'm labeling my legs A and B, and the hypotenuse is C. So the formula I'm using is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this is why we need to memorize squares and square roots. If you have any remaining questions, please write those in the text box on the right. Otherwise, we'll continue on with more problems in class.